Hello, 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 everyone from wherever you are. This is our eighth workshop of our series, Dnaagdawenmag. This is on exploring healthy boundaries and sexuality. So, you know how it goes. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Anyway, so this name, Dnaagdawenmag, was gifted to us by John Rice, and it translates to Path of the New Heart, which I find rather beautiful. So you may already know me, but Anim Bozo, everyone, welcome. My name is Cody Atwood, and I'm so grateful to have everyone here today in whatever capacity that may be. So I currently serve as autism support worker at Dnaagdawenmag, Binnoojiiyag Child and Family Services, and I've been working on this program, well, for quite a while now. I'm sure you're pretty used to seeing our faces. And I originate from Cranbrook, BC. This is where my grandmother is an elder in the Chinaka Nation, specifically the St. Mary's Band. And this nation is very vast, very large. It spans over 30,000 square kilometers from Windermere to the Tobacco Plains in Elmo, Montana. I've been a couple times myself. So pass it over to you, Karina. Miigwech.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. And as always, thank you for joining us from wherever you are right now. My name is Karina Safi. I am the program consultant. I'm working for Mackenzie House, specifically for the behavioral department. And if this is not your first time watching this workshop, you probably already know this information. But yeah, so I do the behavioral part, and I'm very, very lucky to be a co-facilitator with beautiful Cody here. Thank you.
Miigwech. Appreciate that. That's nice. Okay. So we're gonna hop in and past our housekeeping, and we're gonna get right into our agenda. So first and foremost, we're gonna do our opening song where I'm gonna do a smudge. We're gonna talk about some sweetgrass, and then we're gonna get into strawberry teachings. We're gonna look at what exactly is healthy sexuality, the importance of that education, and also learning that identity, right? Then we're going to get into the medicine wheel framework, which we use very often and I'm very fond of, and how we can provide support. Then we're going to look at our elder teaching, our video, the good mind concept, and this is through Marianne Spencer, so she'll provide that video for us. And then we're going to get into some send home resources. And well, if you're with us, maybe some questions and comments, but not today. So this is our song, our beautiful song. But first and foremost, I have my smudge bowl here. This was gifted to me by the agency, along with some of the medicines that I have in here. Today, I specifically have sweetgrass, right? So I just want to give you guys a quick rundown about sweetgrass. It's one of our four sacred medicines, and these medicines and these plants, they're regarded as gifts from Creator, right? And this bowl holds these gifts that we have. They embody many spiritual teachings, that can guide us and guide communities. And the four sacred plants, they really play a crucial role in that ceremonial time, those rituals, the daily life, the healing. And sweetgrass, it holds a special place in my heart and a special place in the hearts of many, as it symbolizes peace, harmony, purification. It's remarked to invite that positive energy in, right? Especially into places where, there's a difficult conversation being had. So it releases that kind aroma and it washes over you really. We can incorporate it into healing ceremonies. We can weave it into baskets, mats, or braids, even for symbolic purposes. And it's a rather fragrant element, right? And it's used to attract those good spirits. And everyone who has these teachings and who holds that knowledge about sweetgrass and our medicines, right? They know that sweetgrass is used with that uniqueness, with that good intention, and it's used to create that harmony and used to connect us in community, right? And used for purification purposes. And yeah, so that's kind of what my rundown is today on some of our medicines. And today I'm going to think about that kindness. I'm going to think about that love, right? Sweetgrass. It's rather beautiful. If you have your medicines on you, I encourage you to smudge. If not, I'll give you a virtual smudge today. And oh, she smells good. Got a bit of a fire going on here. All right. Mm, Fetch. Yeah, sweetgrass, right? Gorgeous. All right, so I'm gonna change my mic over and then we're gonna hop on into this beautiful song as well. Okay, so this song actually isn't typically sung with a drum, at least to the best of my knowledge. I learned this song actually through some research when I was trying to find some music that could complement the workshop today. And I found Dnaagdawenmag, which translates to Strawberry Moon, which we're actually coming up on the Strawberry Moon. In our cycles. So this song was written by Tara Williamson and she sings it so beautifully. I encourage you to look her up on YouTube. I think CBC posted a video where she was able to really describe the song and all of its contents. But she sings it with a piano, and I unfortunately do not have those skills. So today I'm just going to be using the two hands that Creator gave me to give me a bit of a beat. Ore min gize sambe oma. Ore min gize sambe oma. Ore min gize sambe oma. Ambe oma. Ambe oma. Ni chiwaganak knitting away. Ni shemegaya ni mose. Bindigayago, bindigayag, bindigayag, bindigayag. There'll be no more frost by the strawberry moon. We'll take our first swim on a cool night in June. And all that is sweet and all that is kind will grow like a heart from the end of a vine. Ore min gizit sambe oma. Ore min gizit sambe oma. Ore min gizit sambe oma. Ambe oma. Ambe oma. Shimigwech. So it translates to Strawberry Moon, come here. Then in the second verse it says friends, family, younger siblings, and older siblings, everyone come in. And you can see the English on there. It's a bit of a dual song, which is beautiful. And then the last verb there is Strawberry Moon, come here. So miigwech. And of course it's always interesting to try to sing a song without any without any background, right? So that's
It
fun.
was beautiful, as always.
Thank you. So for language, just as we're hopping in, we want to acknowledge the different terms to describe individuals who experience the world in unique ways, such as shiny people, the gift of being different, autism, ASD, neurodivergent. All are valued, and we honor the diverse perspectives that they reflect. For the purpose of today, you will find that shiny people and the gift of being different is the commonly used term. And I just want to very quickly say that this presentation is meant to support awareness around healthy sexuality and boundaries for shiny children. And this information, we really want to work together to create that, combined view of Western research and practice with Indigenous ways of knowing and teaching. And we aim to offer that to IDC perspective that respects and values both, right? So we recognize that every family is going to carry their own teachings, values, cultural understandings, and this information is shared with respect, right? So it's not to replace any of the teachings that you have, but to support the safe, informed, and culturally grounded care, right? Because this is such a broad and layered topic, it may not cover every unique experience of neurodivergent or shiny youth. Instead, it can offer that guidance and insights that are meaningful and relevant for all our young people. So with that, I'll let Karina kind of take over for a moment.
Thank you. Yeah. So if you haven't seen yet our very first workshop with teachings from Elder John Rice, this slide is for you. When we say shiny people, we are recognizing the unique strengths and perspectives of those neurodiverse individuals, including those with autism. And from outside, it may look like, a person is engaging with the world through some strong routines, sensory experiences, or deep interests. And a person may express themselves in ways that are different from typical expectations. So, with these series of workshops, by honoring these differences, we can offer support rooted in understanding rather than just correcting or fixing something. Thank you.
But it's all in that diversity, right? I think
Mhm.
that's really what that explains there is how diverse we all are as a human
Yeah.
population. And today, I kind of want our guiding teaching because it connects so beautifully to our song is the O'Dayman the strawberries, right? So to begin, I would like to bring the strawberries to the forefront of our conversation today. O'Dayman in Anishinaabe means heartberry. So you'll notice that strawberries are the only berries that hold their seeds on that outside, right? That in itself is a teaching. This is what it means to be open, right? It shows us that to feel fully, to still grow strong and to grow kind, right? And in many Anishinaabe communities, the strawberry is seen as the first medicine. This is because it's the first to ripen in the spring. And because of that, it is often used in ceremonies that honor those new beginnings, reconciliation, and in healing and often in memorials too. So you'll find that we have like feast plates out and strawberries are typically put on the feast plate. You'll also see it at like the birthing ceremony of our drums. We use the strawberries to layer onto the drum as we're welcoming it into its new purpose, its new role, and its new life. Right. So with that, there's this old teaching. It says that strawberries, they were placed along the path when the first man and woman had an argument and they parted ways. So the creator, they grew strawberries in front of the woman as she walked, right? Hoping to remind her of the love that she shared with her partner, of sweetness, of what was worth returning to. And she stopped and she tasted one and remembered her heart. So that is a much longer story, but that's that's the gist of it. So the story it reminds us to honor our heart and in ourselves, right? It can be interpreted in many ways. And I think how I interpret it is this relationship that's depicted can be the relationship that you have with yourself. So returning to yourself, returning to your spirit, to tending your fire, remembering the sweetness of life amongst all the chaos. The strawberry, it's connected to the sacredness of menstruation and cycles, right? And in some Anishinaabe communities, the berry fast is a traditional ceremony that occurs when a young person experiences menstruation for the first time, or what we would call it as moon time. So grandmothers, our cookums, right? Our aunties, they're going to guide this young person in the teachings around their body and the sacredness of this journey that they're embarking on as they experience puberty. So if we step in the shoes of our shiny ones, this experience probably feels very overwhelming. I know it felt overwhelming for me, and at times it can be fearful, right? Especially if it's never if we've never had some teachings on menstruation or puberty or cycles before. And as a caregiver, you might start to notice changes in the way that the child or youth behaves in their body, their mood, their spirit. And we're going to look at these changes at some point today so you can help notice and prepare for a conversation. And with that, I kind of want to get into our cultural symbolisms. That's also going to really complement some of what we talk about today. And this slide really offers that cultural lens. It offers, how we can talk about cycles and reproductive knowledge and sacred connection to the body that we have in ways that may be meaningful for Indigenous youth. So the Haudenosaunee creation story, again, I don't have time to go into all of it today, but I'm just going to give you guys a glimpse, and I encourage you guys to look at it, and to read it and to learn it. But the Haudenosaunee creation story really holds that deep symbolism for how life mirrors how we begin and how we grow and how it changes. And when we return to these teachings, we're really connecting with our body knowledge in a way that, connects us to the sacredness, the circle of life, right? So I learned that the Haudenosaunee creation story has these symbolisms, and a lot of times I like to refer to our cultural resource advisors. Alicia Mendez was the first person who told me about the Haudenosaunee creation story, and I thank her for it because it's rather beautiful. And it really, it kind of starts with Sky Woman, right? So in the story, she falls through the sky world and descends down through space. Eventually, she lands on the back of a turtle, right? And there's this written word piece that I'm going to put in our references later, but it touched on that symbolism through Quisquenane elders. So they share that, her descent can symbolize the journey of the egg through the fallopian tube. So how cool is that when you take a step back and you look and you're like, wow, that is life. That's life starting, right? She carries the seeds of life with her in her hand, and she brings with her the teachings about balance, relationship, and creation. And we can see the muskrat and when Sky Woman lands on the back of the turtle, she wants to make Earth, she wants to make world, to make life, right? So the muskrat dives through the waters and retrieves the mud, which actually can remind us of how our body prepares for our cycle. So the mud is symbolic of the uterine lining, and the muskrat, it might not have known what would come from its effort, but the body too prepares without needing a specific outcome. So that lining builds, and when it's not needed, it releases, right? And we see this mirrored all around us. So the leaves fall when the trees prepare for winter. The snow covers the ground like a soft blanket, and eventually it melts and it nourishes the soil again. So moontime can follow that same natural pattern, a shedding, resting, a renewal. And the turtle who carries Sky Woman into this world, right? And helps her create this world. It begins to take shape, that life that we're seeing. And this can be seen as the womb itself, the holding, the supporting, it being steady for us, right? The womb, like the turtle's back, is a place of creation, but also of protection. And these teachings can really offer us a way of understanding our bodies. We're already wise. We're already in relationship with the seasons, the water, the circle. And the most beautiful perspective that we can get from these symbolic teachings is that everything we already know is within us, right? It's about unearthing it, peeling back that onion layer to find it, It's in everything around us. It's in our environment, it's in creation. Everything that we want to know about our bodies, how it works, the changes that it goes through is embedded within the earth, and it's in spotting it and honing in on that we can completely, and that's going to ultimately guide us, And it's said that it kind of reminds me of our sweetgrass, the sweetgrass that we hold, that braid that we can find. And when we smell the sweetgrass, it's often said to remind us of the things that we have thought we've long forgotten, right? So it can be a reminder. And I think that's a good way to segue into what healthy sexuality is through Karina. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. So, what do we mean by healthy sexuality? Healthy sexuality is a natural and important part of human development. It's a core part of identity and personality. It's shaped, sorry, by many factors and not just biology. And some of the dimensions, some of them you can see on the slide. So, how we see ourselves, our values, how we socialize, those are the part of all healthy sexuality, right? So when we support healthy sexuality, we're supporting the whole person actually. And this is true for all youth, including shiny youth. It's not just about, again, sexual behavior. It's about understanding yourself, respecting others and yourself, and making safe, informed choices. So, sexuality is also deeply tied to one's personality and sense of identity. And we will be talking about it more in more details throughout the workshop. It's a basic human need and a part of being human. That's why approaching it with a positive, strengths-based mindset is so important. Because when young people are shamed or punished for expressing aspects of their sexuality, it can be very negatively impacting all parts of their life, right? And yeah, another key reason for teaching healthy sexuality is to help clarify conflicting messages young people receive from society and media. And you can see this on the slide, a little bit of that, right? Whether we like it or not, children and teens will learn about sex and sexuality. And if it's not from trusted adults, it's likely to be going to be from TV, YouTube, peers, or other less reliable resources. And we have plenty these days, right? So sexualized content is nearly everywhere. Even if you look into children's media, want it or not, it's somehow there sometimes. And if a child's only exposure to this topic comes from the internet or entertainment, they are absolutely at risk of misunderstanding and making unsafe decisions. This is especially true for our neurodivergent youth because they might, see those social interpretations and understandings in different ways, right? And they may interpret the information differently or take it too literally because that's one of the gifts they have, right? Seeing those patterns, seeing those things in the core. So, yeah, some shiny children, for instance, can access the same media like everyone else, but their ability to, again, interpret the information or context may be different. So that puts them at risk. And we have to consider how curious youth turn to the internet for answers. They Google everything, right? Everything, you name it. And now with this chat GPT, I feel like it's even faster and there's so many resources, so many ways to learn about things. So the point is it needs to be supervised, right? Supervised by trusted adults. A real life example that was provided by one of my colleagues, yeah, so the child was researching superheroes, and the parent was there during this whole interaction with the internet. And the child, being a child, instead of Hawkeye, they somehow typed hot guy, and you can only imagine what was the search result, right? So again, you can see like how in this scenario the adult was there, but really it still didn't limit 100% the possibility of the child getting, of unfiltered information, let's call it that. So this is why proactive education is so, so critical. When we give youth the correct information first, we reduce the chance of confusion, of shame, misinformation, and we strengthen their ability to make safe, respectful, and informed choices, right? And yeah, good
Mhm.
decisions. Thank you.
And then there's identity, which is the most complex, confusing thing that we could possibly talk about today. But it's really important, right? Because identity is formed and shaped through so many different ways, and it changes throughout our life. And that's the most beautiful part about it is how fluid it is. And this visual uses the teaching of the tree rings. I know I've shown this to you before. I believe John Matson originally introduced me to how we can view life on the tree rings, but I'm using it today to show how identity, sexuality, and body knowledge develop over time. So like a tree, we don't know who we're going to become all at once, and we don't know what it'll look like years from now, right? But we grow in these layers, and some rings they may form really slow, and others are going to form quite rapidly, and every ring contributes to who we are becoming. So I want to walk you through these layers. We have infancy. This is maybe infancy into early childhood, and at the very core of this tree is attachment, right? So this is where safety, trust, and co-regulation are established. The child learns through your presence, through being with you. So when caregivers respond consistently to those needs, the feeding, the holding, the calming, the loving, the child's nervous system learns that the world is safe and relationships can be trustworthy, right? Then we move into childhood. And as we move outwards, right, children begin exploring their space in the world through play, through story, through imitation. This is a vital window to introduce body awareness and personal space through gentle, clear repetition. So, this is your body. You can say no to hugs. And this stage really lays the groundwork for consent, for safety, for self worth. And puberty. This ring is where growth accelerates in all aspects. So it can be a very confusing time, especially for our shiny children and youth, right? As our body changes faster than, you know, it can change faster in some scenarios as compared to language or potentially self-awareness to match. So this can include first moon time, erections, changes in voice and demeanor, private interests and increased need for space. And this might be where the first real questioning happens of identity, attraction, sexual safety. And caregivers often get nervous here, right? And as is your right, it can be confusing, it can be hard to navigate, but this is the moment where clarity really matters the most. So youth can really benefit from that simple, direct information that is safe, it's intentional, and non-judgmental. We must also remember that some children, they may experience puberty before they're developmentally ready to understand it, right? So this makes predictable, culturally grounded guidance even more important. And we get into adolescence or youth. We're kind of slowly transitioning out of puberty, the initial stages of puberty. And here the tree begins to open to fuller expression, right? Identity, gender, orientation, and purpose all begin to take shape in more complex ways. So youth begin asking, who am I becoming? Who sees me for who I am? What kind of relationships do I want? And this is the stage where belonging can become critical, right? So if youth do not feel safe in expressing themselves, if they're ashamed for who they are or who they love, they might turn to risk or silence or withdrawal to cope. And this is where self-care and reflection happen and they deepen, right? So adolescents start learning how to tend to their own needs, but only if they've been shown how to, right? So whether the ring is formed in safety or potentially in struggle, it can stay with them. It's going to stay with them. And our role is to help make the next one stronger. So next, we're going to begin discussing what to expect when puberty begins to blossom.
So many things, right? But first, I want to have a little remark on two-eyed seeing because that's what we're trying to apply here, right? So both Western and Indigenous perspectives recognize puberty as an important transition. In Indigenous knowledge, cycles and bodily changes are often supported with teachings, ceremonies, and connection to land and ancestors. And two-eyed seeing invites us to bring those two ways together, offering structured, supportive learning while honoring spirits, the identity, and relational growth. So this slide provides a fuller picture of how puberty may present in both neurotypical and neurodivergent youth or shiny youth. So caregivers and professionals can offer compassionate and individualized as possible support. For shiny youth, puberty may require more explicit, more sensory aware support. And it's important to remember that behavioral shifts aren't always defiant. They may be a signal or message of confusion, distress, sensory overload, right? So there's always underlying reason why the behavior happens. Visual stories, storytelling, routines, those tools can help reduce anxiety and build confidence. And again, in two-eyed seeing, we honor the spirit and unique learning path of each child. And neurodivergence, again, not a problem to be solved, but a unique way of experiencing the world that we can support with both behavioral insights and cultural understanding. And let's look at the next slide where we can talk a little bit more on puberty and our shiny youth, right? It can be, again, especially challenging for shiny youth. Hormonal changes may come with increased anxiety, sensory sensitivities, change in some routines or needing to change some routines and sensory requirements, right? And can change drastically. I'm just thinking right now, all of a sudden it came to my mind. I had a client who had, let's say, a sensory profile, like their whole life, their whole childhood, they had sensitivities to certain things, but then puberty started, and this child started liking some sensory inputs that they never liked before. So it can be that drastic. And again, behavioral shifts too, right? So communication around body changes may be delayed or misunderstood as well sometimes. That's why using tools like social stories or storytelling, visuals, and concrete language is so crucial. For example, social stories, they help explain changes in the calm, step-by-step way. For example, again, story can go like, one day I might see hair on my body. This means I'm growing up. I can use deodorant every day. So that way, it's a very, very simple, basic example, but that way you deliver a story right? That explains those changes. And of course, it will depend on the child's age and their needs and their learning style, right? You might add more pictures, less words, or the opposite. Or you can sit down and have create a comic together or the story together, right? Again, on visuals, my favorite. Visuals are always working. This is for supporting routine, right? Those visual schedules. You can have a bathroom chart for personal hygiene that can just have a few basic steps. Wash your body, rinse, dry off, use deodorant. Very, very simple, but a very good reminder because, again, our shiny children sometimes they're so attuned to the world that, routine might not be so important right now because I have so many other beautiful things around me that I want to explore, right? So having the visual reminder always helps most of the time. I shouldn't say always. I'm just a very big advocate for visuals. Lastly, concrete language. So avoiding confusion. That's why we want to use the concrete language instead of saying you are becoming an adult and going on those big, big, big conversations. They're good, but not always useful. You can say very literally, your body's growing, you may get hair, and your voice might change, right? So you're just giving expectations, right? You are explaining that something's going to happen, and those are the steps. So don't be too anxious if it's possible when you're a teenager. So these tools help shiny children understand what's happening and feel more confident and safe. And it's also safer for adults as well. And I stopped talking. I'll pass it back to Cody. Thank you.
Very curious, Karina. Can you hear this dog barking in the background, or is it just me?
No, can't hear
No,
anything. So
perfect. Okay, so noise suppression is working great today. Just wanted to
yeah.
check in. So, one of the most effective and protective things that we can do is give children and youth the correct names for their body parts early and clearly, which kind of connects to your point, Karina, about that, avoiding less confusion, right? So, as you can see here, I have some strategies about how to teach body words on the screen. So, as I'm speaking, feel free to maybe take a screenshot of this slide because these are some good strategies that you can use. So children, they can't disclose abuse if they do not have these words. So when we say things like down there or flower or these cutesy names, we may actually be at risk of creating gaps in their safety language. So especially for shiny youth who interpret things and maybe language quite literally, those euphemisms can be confusing and misleading. So using terms like penis, vulva, testicles, chest, and anus helps a child know exactly what they're referring to. And it helps helpers like doctors, nurses, teachers, and protection workers respond clearly and seriously if something has been said or something has been done. So knowing body terms actually helps reduce shame as well. And we know from research that children who use the correct names for their genitals are significantly more likely to disclose if something unsafe has happened to them. So we want to make sure that this teaching, it's inclusive and protective, and that means using the same language with every child, no matter their gender, whether they're verbal or nonverbal. So we can add that everybody is also different, right? So some people have scars or medical supports, but the message stays the same. Those parts are theirs and they deserve privacy. So we can teach the bathing suit rule just as a quick example, as a simple concrete guideline. No one should touch the parts of your body that a bathing suit covers, right? Especially if they're developmentally at the age where they're going to be doing things more independently. They're probably not going to have any helpers who are, changing them, like a diaper, for example. This is going to be strictly their private space at their time. And if anything does happen, then talk to me. So how do we actually teach these words to shiny children and youth, especially those who may communicate a little bit differently, right? So I have a few tools here that you can see on the screen. For literal or visual learners, you can use a laminated body outline poster with Velcro labels like penis or vulva, and you can let the youth help place the labels, and you can actually turn it into a matching game. So it's very educational, but also kind of fun, right? And then for youth who use like an alternative communication device or a picture exchange communication system, make sure that their communication device actually includes a page dedicated to body part icons, right? And that these icons are paired, or you have the option of saying like ouch or hurt or stop, yes, no, right? So practicing combining them, vulva, no, right? So you can disclose what becomes familiar. So disclosure can become familiar and it can become less scary. We have our sensory seekers, so our soft dolls can be used during this time. Maybe a doll with anatomy features, right? It can help make the words feel normal and neutral during play or self-care or hygiene routines, right? So you can really role play with this, and especially if it comes to like bathing, even you can say, here's my doll. My dolly bathes. She's clean, right? And for those who thrive on routines, we can, create a mirror mantra, right? So we can brush our teeth, and after we brush our teeth, we can sing a body song, right? There was this one really, really cute song that I had heard, and it was If I Were a Fish. Look that song up. It's very cute, very sweet, and it helps provide some of that self-confidence too, that body confidence. And then for those who may carry anxiety or shame, social stories have to be gentle, but they have to be clear too, right? So try something like my body has private parts. I can say stop if someone touches me there. I can tell an adult. So this is a script example for what you can use in your home. So this is your vulva. Maybe you're using that printed sheet like earlier. Only you can wash down there. Only you can get yourself dressed in this private space, right? Unless, of course, the child does require that extra help, but this should, again, only be like the direct caregiver of this child, right? So if anyone else wants to touch your vulva, you have to tell me right away. So you can make it simple, repetitive, make it empowering too. So this is likely not going to be a one-time conversation. It's something that will be revisited often and should be revisited often. So during bathroom routines, when changing clothes, before doctor visits, or when they're feeling curious, right? Doing this can normalize the vocabulary and it can help the child feel confident using it when it counts. So now that we've laid the groundwork with naming, I really want to move on to how we can help the children and youth understand kinds of touches, safe touch, unsafe touch, or something that might be confusing for them. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. So this beautiful slide is created by Cody. I just want to put it out there because it's really good. She was able to summarize, and it's based on the article. So fascinating how you're able to put all this into the slide. And so this article, I believe, is going to be referenced to later in our reference page. So it talks about two essential parts to learning about abuse prevention and the skills. So those are the skills. First, knowing the correct body words that we talked about already. And second is being able to label touches as safe, unsafe, or secret. Kids who master both disclose abuse earlier and with clearer details. So this slide, again, will talk about skill number 2, right, about those touches. So we can begin with the idea of public and private body zones. This is where the labeling proves important. But a helpful way to explain this is by, saying something. If you need to pull something down, unbutton, or unzip clothing to see that part, this is private. We can move then into the 3 categories of touch, each paired with a color as a visual cue, because we know visuals are helpful. This can be really helpful, again, for those who prefer the visual learning, right? So green can be categorized as safe touch. This is a touch that helps the body or shows the care safely, right? This may be a hug that it was initiated by a child or asked for, and the consent was received. A high five or a doctor's checkup or nurse checkup with a caregiver present and with the gloves on. Not the caregiver, the doctor should put the gloves on. Red, this is for unsafe touch. These are touches that can hurt, can scare, cause discomfort, or happen on private parts. This can include hitting or punching, but also touching a child's penis, vulva, anus, or chest in an explicit way. We can use the phrase, for example, like if someone's touching you, touches your private parts, even if they call it a game, that is red. This is unsafe, even if it's called game or called fun, right? So next we're moving to gray. Gray is for secret touch. This is very important. A secret touch is any touch that someone tells them to keep quiet, even if it seems playful again, right? Or gentle. If someone says, do not tell your mom, or do not tell your caregiver, right? Or this is our little secret. That is great, and this is not okay by any means, whatever it is. So there are, again, various different ways how can we teach those touches. Again, so let's categorize it for visual learners. You're probably going to know what I'm going to say, right? Draw or trace a body on paper and let your youth or your child play with color zones, right? Green, safe or, safe touches. Red, unsafe touch. Gray is something that is secret. And as we talked in our life workshops, not only it helps to teach those safe, unsafe touches, it also gives you an idea of, you know, how your child perceives this whole concept, right? Because if you think about it, it's quite a complex concept. So it works both ways. You teach your child, but you also learn more about your child, and you learn more on, what kind of topic you want to emphasize more, maybe in this
Mhm,
conversation.
mhm. I like that,
So
Karina, because
yeah,
when you think about it, if you have this child doing this activity and they have green on their chest or maybe in between their legs
yeah.
or what have you, that would be, oh, okay, so we really do need to have this conversation then, right?
Absolutely, right? Yeah, and maybe you will discover that your child not necessarily remembers all the right terms for those body parts, right? Because that's another thing that we're gonna encourage you do like repetition, the consistency, right? So for our kiddos who are not using words or maybe limited, have limited vocabulary of words, um, feeling a sorting game using emotion cards, right? Happy, uncomfortable, scared, again, color coded. Pair each of this with a type of touch and ask your child to match the feeling or the situation. Again, you teach them, the concept that you want them to know, but also you learn it. If they know those concepts, if they understand, like you see the level of understanding and perception. For sensory seekers, help the child make their own safety rules. I think we really went in details, like, we became very creative during the life workshop, right? Own safety rules, book using printed pictures of themselves. You have what have you. Label was, what's private. Again, the color coding. So the act of cutting out images, potentially gluing and adding felt or coloring or glitter, again, whatever are the preferred materials, that also could be a good sensory activity. And if it's pleasing, it enhances the learning as well, right? And for those who thrive on routines, have laminated page of safety adults, right? Adults, children too, or youth. That's important to remember. It's not just adults, right? Sometimes. So have those pictures and have those discussions. Who you want to see on your the safety list, right? And I think we talked about it that it can change. One morning your child can wake up and say, like, you know what, I want to add that person, and that can be a good prompt for the conversation. Why you feel that way today? Maybe prompt again the conversation and repetition of those, okay, what's safe, what's unsafe. So many opportunities. I love to, or I think children are so creative, and they just give us those opportunities to start conversations, important conversations with them. So yeah, and just remember, sometimes our kiddos, they might not understand the first time, the what's disclosure, what's that. So again, those discussions are important. I'm almost done, I promise. So for those, yeah, go ahead.
On that note, actually, it's really important, but I think there was a study that was done that shows sometimes caregivers may tell their children to tell
Right.
them, like, oh, you come to me, you tell me directly, right? Um, but it doesn't specify multiple people, so sometimes the child or youth might not be understood the first time that they make their disclosure. Like maybe they came to you, but maybe they didn't know how to say it in the right way, so they want to try again. But well, I was told to tell my caregiver, but, right, they might not have heard, maybe there was misunderstood or confused, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we do specify, tell as many people as you
Thank
can.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for pointing that out. Exactly, right. So that goes to, again, understanding the concept, understanding it's not that literal to just tell me. You can tell any of those trusted adults from the list on, maybe it's your fridge, right? Yeah. And so for those who carry additional anxiety or shame, practicing body movement games to release this tension, right? Practice freeze and stay stop games like red light, green light thing instead, except you're citing the scenarios for the safe touches and whatnot, right? So to sum it up, we want these activities to be a part of everyday life too, not specifically for big moments or one size fits all conversations. The more practice children and youth have in naming these types of touches, the more empowerment they will feel if it, God forbid, happens, and when when it matters. Yeah. So now we're gonna transition to the next slide, and Cody.
Language. Yeah, we're going to talk about some protective factors and context to our well-being. So this first, I want to start with risk factors, and if you haven't been introduced to the medicine wheel for before, well, I just want to say it's a framework. It's been used for time immemorial. It's a way of seeing wholeness, right? It reminds us that every young person, every shiny child is made up of many factors that contribute to who they are. They're a circle of experiences, needs, of gifts, and this circle moves through four interconnected realms: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So, in the work that we do around sexuality, boundaries, or identity, we have to expand further than behavior. So, we have to take a step back. We have to ask, is this young person in balance? Like, are they feeling balanced? What has been supported? What has been left unsupported, whether it's by systems, by silence, or by circumstance? So what you see on this slide are the risk factors that emerge when the circle is not in balance. The red text surrounding the wheel is about awareness, right? These are the cracks where confusion, harm, or vulnerability can enter if we're not tending to the circle with care. So I want to first start in the physical realm. So when children do not know proper body words or proper words for their body, or when their privacy is not respected, they do not have the tools to name discomfort or realize when they might be, making others uncomfortable too, right? So they might not know what touch crosses a line, or they might think it's something that they just have to accept. So the risk factors in this section are limited body words. This might lead, to sensory overwhelm, not being able to communicate what is going on inside their body at that moment. Potentially experimenting with body unsafely. So this might look like many different things, but it could be exposure in public areas, and then also we have to be mindful of overprotection. So sometimes we overprotect our children, and this could be causing a crack, right? So this is where naivety comes in, and they might be naive about abuse signs. We can move down into the emotional realm. So this is where, grief and shame that might go unnamed. It can settle deep in the heart. And when a youth does not feel worthy of that love or that kindness, they might start to accept whatever attention they can get in that moment. Even if it's controlling, if it's unsafe or harmful, they might not have the tools to recognize what safe love feels like. So many of us are not given these tools, excuse me, either. And that is why we are here to learn to offer it to them now, right? And then the emotional realm, you'll see that I've put down some risk factors: internalized shame, unprocessed grief or trauma influencing trust and self-worth, exposure to violent or sexualized content. This can really do damage on like an emotional impact level, right? And unsafe relationships can be masked as friendship or mentorship. So that is a fearful risk factor as well, especially if they don't have the context of what relationships are meant to be. So then we can move over into the mental realm. So I want you to think of it as what's coming at young people every single day, right? Karina kind of touched on it, but we have mixed messages about sex, body image, identity, power, right? So you see that, there are women's bodies and men's bodies and different types of bodies that you see online, but they're trending, right? So like if you have to look this specific way to be, idealized and to be found attractive, right? So this can be really confusing. And if a shiny youth who takes maybe potentially everything to heart, right? They wear that heart on their sleeve, and they might have that literal thinking, or they might be very trusting. They may unfollow unsafe suggestions or get drawn into manipulative online relationships without realizing it. So you'll see I have misinformation on online spaces, online grooming tactics, right? So flattery, gifts, secrecy, and this could target our vulnerable children and youth, right? And then there's also barriers in navigating healthcare, right? There's lots of wait lists, and it might not be the most comfortable space to have to go to a walk-in clinic about anything regarding our sexual identity or self. So there are some barriers there. When we go up into the spiritual realm, up in the north, when teachings are lost or hidden, teachings about like potentially moon time or two-spirit identity or clan roles, a youth may feel lost in where they belong, right? And when we do not know our own self-worth or where we belong, we are more likely to seek connection in places that don't honor us. So substance use, risky sexual behaviors to fill that place that is missing, right? So you'll see that I have disconnection from ceremony could be a risk factor. Identity erasure, that is just a phase. That's just a phase. Like you're not going to be like this forever, right? And while we're ever changing and stuff, this could be damaging too as well. So we have loss of language and story that affirm body and sacred cycles, right? We've lost a lot of that. We also have colonial trauma and that can overshadow those strengths and those gifts. And this is why the medicine wheel matters in this conversation. So it tells us something critical, that sexual risk does not begin at the moment of harm. It can begin earlier in what has not been named, affirmed, or protected. So when we see a child acting out sexually or being overly compliant, which means they are accepting, and they say yes in various of occasions without giving it much like thought behind it. So that could be what is seen as overly compliant. Or if they're unsure about boundaries, it can be a sign that the medicine wheel is out of balance, or they might be missing some education or knowledge in these pieces. So it can be in what they've been surrounded by or what they've not been surrounded by. So as we move forward, I invite you to think about what you may be missing, or what may be missing from a young person's wheel. So in this moment, I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to take a pause. So what is another risk factor that you may notice in any of the categories pertaining to sexuality? So you notice I have that red text up there. Give me maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4 risk factors and write them down on your page or in your notes that you're taking right now. And we're going to move on to protective factors. All right, so we've explored the risks that can arise when a child circle is off balance, and I want to return to the other side of the teaching and what it looks like when the wheel is being tended to. So this slide, it's about what we can do, what we can offer. It's not necessarily about perfection by any means. It's just an essential teaching on how our presence can be served as medicine. So you'll see that each realm of the medicine wheel holds protective factors. Practical things like caregivers, helpers, and community members can really help support to strengthen a child's relationship with their body, mind, emotions, and spirit. So we'll start in the physical realm, out in the east, something as simple as respecting their private space, the bedroom, the bathroom. This can give a child or youth their autonomy to explore their body, right? Having access to the right supplies, pads, tampons, condoms, depending on the age, of course. This can help build a sense of safety and dignity for them too. Again, teaching those body words without shame and offering sensory tools that can respect a child's unique way of being, these can be foundational. These are just small things that can carry, big medicine. And then we can go over to the emotional realm. So this is about relationships and regulation. So when we help youth name difficult feelings or complex feelings, when we repair gently after conflict, when we surround them with safe relationships and friendships and adults who can co-regulate, we are protecting them, because emotional safety leads to safer choices. And self-worth can become part of the shield against coercion. So you'll see positive self-talk, naming and noticing difficult feelings, caring and safe friendships, and repair and apologies. I think those are really important, that piece specifically. And then we can get over into the mental realm where clarity and truth are everything. So youth, they need simple, honest, and respectable tools to navigate complex information, especially online. So safety scripts, visual aids, and access to affirming care can help reduce confusion and create that sense of control. So these tools are especially vital for shiny youth who benefit from the predictability and those concrete steps. So we want to get them access to clear, reliable facts, safety scripts, and identifying those unsafe actions online. So providing boundaries, it's not just about what we can do, but maybe we can provide what we shouldn't do as well, because sometimes children and youth don't know, right? They don't know what isn't acceptable. So it's good giving them that access to that information too. We can go into the spiritual realm where protection means affirmation of who the child is, how they move through the world, and where they belong. So, ceremony, language, land, and identity, and those stories really remind a child that they're more than what challenges they're facing at the time. They can carry those gifts, right? So when youth are reminded of their sacredness, whether through smudge, song, name, or simply being listened to, they're less likely to seek validation in unsafe ways. And what's important here is that we are not saying you have to do all of these things at once. This is not a checklist. It is a circle. I like to say strengthen one part and you'll see shifts in the others. So take a moment to yourself, look at this wheel, maybe just think this. You don't have to write it down, but think about what is already working for you, for your child. Think about one thing that you could support more fully. Is it today or is it going to be this week? So this slide, I really just wanted to, restore that hope because that balance is possible. And I know risk factors are scary. So I want to provide you with, what happens when we do try to tend to our circle. It's often that, we can make little steps that are built in those small, quiet moments that we choose again and again, and that can help strengthen it all together. Miigwech.
Thank you. Thank you. A lot of good information. And let's talk about another big and scary topic, the sexual development, right? It's a huge topic, so we're going to just touch upon it today. So it's common for caregivers and professionals to feel concerned when they notice behavior that seems sexual in nature, because oftentimes we may not always be sure what's, normal, acceptable, age appropriate, or whether it's something to, worry about. But part of creating safety and understanding comes from knowing that sexual development is a natural process, right? There's nothing wrong about it. And it actually begins much, much earlier than most people think. So maybe knowing this information will give you a little bit of, support and feeling of safety. So sexual development doesn't start at adolescence. It starts in utero, believe it or not. While that might sound surprising, research supports this idea that children are born as sexual beings. This doesn't mean, however, that they are engaging in adult sexuality. It means they are growing in body awareness and curiosity, comfort, relationships, from very beginning. From birth, children learn about themselves and others through touching, through exploring the environment around them, right? And building understanding based on this learning. So these behaviors are part of healthy development and they help us prepare for deeper social, emotional, and relational growth later in life. In the next slide that we can move to, we'll look at examples of when something might be a signal for more support. Not gonna talk a lot about this, right? So you can see some behavioral examples that might require extra support. However, a big, big, big reminder, please remember, we always want to consider the behaviors in their context, looking at the circumstances under which they have occurred, right? We do not want to place negative labels, right? We don't want to punish healthy and expected sexual development, even if it looks and feels scary. Take a pause, think about it, maybe search in Google, right? Do what our teens do, Google it. Not always it's like, no, don't do that, just go for professional help maybe. But so yeah, we want to correct the context, right? And we want to work on the conditions under which some behaviors are occurring. So if that is problematic though, if that is actually something to provide more support with. I don't want to say word fix. So we want to avoid receiving negative labels. And as an example of, this behavior, for example, pulling pants for urination, right? It's perfectly normal behavior in the context of going to a private washroom, or, in the context of going to the bathroom stall if it's a private washroom. However, the same behavior might not be appropriate in a context of a busy street with lots of people, right? It might not feel okay. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about the context. And just always the main suggestion is just take a pause, think about it, maybe ask for an advice, and we're going to talk about it as well. But please don't punish right away. Thank you.
I think it's also good to have this chart because, some people may or may not know what might qualify as, some
Absolutely.
concerning behavior. I like how it's laid out with, adolescence and childhood, 0 to 10 years, and then youth, like 10 to 18 years, right? So it's good to just like keep this in mind when you guys are referring or observing any behaviors that you might be experiencing with your child.
Totally.
So we're going to get into healthy sexuality then. I think that's a perfect spot to, take a moment and to watch this gorgeous video that Marianne Spencer has created for us. So let me just share my screen. I'm getting better at this, slowly but surely.
So Sego Sawagwego, Ani Bojo. I hope you'll have peace in your hearts today. My Mohawk name is Dagari Wakwa. You may know me as Marianne Spencer. I'm the elder for Dnaagdawenmag Binnoojiiyag. I come from Tyendinaga Mohawk territory where we're Gunyankunhaga. I am Dana Wagatihuni, which is Wolf Clan, and I'm going to talk to you today about healthy sexuality from an Indigenous lens. So, prior to colonization, we had a way of being in this world that was very much ourselves and unique to us as Indigenous people. And as Haudenosaunee people, we understand, first of all, our own sacredness and how that came to be as human beings living here on Turtle Island. And that came from Sky Woman, our origin story, our creation story of how we came to be. And as Haudenosaunee people and understanding our sacredness, we often forget that in today's fast-paced life that we live. Sometimes we forget, to look back at who we are and how important we are. And I had a person talk to me about, how sometimes we forget. That's why we have ceremonies, right? We have ceremonies to remind us about that sacredness and coming together. And one of the important things about ourselves is learning about how our sexuality is in this world and what healthy sexuality is. Oftentimes, we get involved in things that are unhealthy to us. Maybe sometimes we get pregnant at too early of an age. Sometimes we get involved in things where we're not mature enough to really understand because our way of being has been disrupted. Our way of thinking has been disrupted. And when we go back to the very beginning, we understand where maybe some of the things that our teachings laid out for us were not said to us as we were growing up in today's world. So healthy sexuality sometimes gets skewed. And when we talk about our traditional ways, sometimes we forget to mention, right, that there's more than just male and there's more than just female. And that nature has a way of helping us understand how an expression of ourselves can be any one of those things. It's not just one thing. So, what I was told when I was growing up is that there's a little bit of male in me as well as female. And sometimes in men, there's a little bit of female and more male. But there is so many different ways that our sexuality can come out. And we're as diverse as the way that that happens. One of the beautiful things in our Indigenous communities is, if you were seen as maybe different by today's standards, you were seen as a gift. Being different was a gift in our communities, and you were needed, and you were loved, and you were accepted, and as part of a family, as a part of a community. And that the way that our sexuality played out was always for the continuation of life, no matter what. So even if maybe you didn't even bring a baby in this world, you would make sure that whatever baby you were watching or taking care of, you were doing the best that you could to ensure that it was going to grow strong and to have a good life. And maybe, you would be there to help in some respect. So when I talked about the strawberry in our creation story, if you look at that strawberry, the strawberry gives us teachings on a woman's uterus, a woman's womb, where a child will be housed. And the seeds on that strawberry remind us of the men's responsibility to fertilize, right, the eggs in that womb. And also, when you see these beautiful runners on that strawberry, those runners are those extended family that are all around us, our aunties, our uncles, our brothers, our sisters. Our fireside family might be our mother and father, but we have this beautiful extended family of aunties and uncles and community members that all have this same important thought process, which is how are we going to continue our existence here? And we can't do that if we have hate in our hearts, or if we're fighting, or if we're, doing things that are not in line with those teachings of understanding, how to take care of ourselves. So when a man and woman come together, that foundation is being created. And maybe, they have this understanding that they will procreate, they'll bring forth that child through that intimate contact. And that intimate contact isn't just a part for a man and a woman. It could be for a woman and a woman, or a man and a man. It doesn't matter, because we understood that love is love, and that we are taking care of those next 7 generations of children. So, as if I were a young woman, I would go through understanding my moon time, how important that is. Not like today, where, there's so many negative ways that we talk about it that make it a shameful experience. So we're trying to, reinstate this healthy way, loving way, how important that moon time is, and how to take care of yourself, and how to understand the sacredness of yourself on that time, right from the very beginning, when you would celebrate getting that moon time, to the next phase, and the next phase of your life, where we might call that menopause. Every aspect of a woman would be taken care of right till the time she was ready to leave this world. And for men as well, those those ways of being about how to take care of our bodies, what's happening with our bodies, where do we go when we need to talk to somebody, or about really hard issues. That would have been taken care of by the uncles in our community who understood, we're going to take those young boys, they said, and we call this anuma. They would come and they would take those young boys and they would show them how to survive, how to do things in the wilderness, how to maybe survive through difficult times, how to light a fire, how to sleep out in the open, but also how to take care of themselves, how to take care of their bodies, to meet their nutritional needs, to know what's happening and those changes in a man's life, and to be celebrated for that, so that when those two, the men and the women, would come together when they were older, those men would really understand and respect the women, and the women would really understand and respect the men. But oftentimes we don't talk about, what happens when a man would like to be with a man, or a woman would like to be with a woman. Those are very important things that we used to see in our communities all the time, that were accepted and that were loved. They were our people. And too often, those teachings get disrupted by racism and discrimination of today, and we forget then our sacredness at all levels of our sexuality and who we are as Indigenous people and how that plays out today, and that we are all important and we are all needed in our communities to raise those children up again, to be there, to be the aunties and uncles, to be that gift for our children. And it has to start with us, though. We have to start to understand we need to give ourselves what we need. We need to celebrate ourselves, our ability to bring forth life, our ability to be a part of that, about an ability to know that we are of value and important in every aspect of a community's development, that no matter how we see ourselves in this world, that we belong no matter what, and that we are valued no matter what, and that we will still continue to reclaim those things and help our young people who might have those different sexualities that exist within them, to live a good life, to be loved, and to honor that process, because that was such a sacred, beautiful time for them to come into this world and to be loved for who they were. So, takniko, nyawa.
I love just that we are all important. We are all valued. I think that's a beautiful thing to say. And it sounds so simple in retrospect, but it's hard to practice that self-love, that love for others, especially if our cup is a little empty. So it's just a good reminder, right? Beautiful. Okay, Karina, you'll have to let me know. Can you see notes?
Nope. Feel
Amazing.
good.
Look at that.
Yeah.
All right. You good?
All right, let's move on and talk now about how to talk about sexuality, right? And what to consider. So, first of all, comfort level. It's okay to feel uncomfortable talking about sexuality. If you're not comfortable, perhaps one of the solutions could be finding another trusted adult or professional who can provide the necessary information. However, again, I think during our live workshops, we were talking about the fact that also as an adult, as a caregiver, you would like to avoid escaping this conversation by your like having this conversation by yourself. So the point is try your best to have this conversation yourself with
Yeah, it's
with your
like
children. Mhm.
being a caregiver truly means getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many uncomfortable aspects, right, of being a caregiver. So just add one more. It's okay. But if you really need some support, you can maybe invite a friend, right? Somebody from the community, a trusted person, uh, to support you there, right? If you don't want to be alone in this conversation, you can also turn this conversation and planning this conversation into a conversation with your child first and say like, hey, there's a topic that I want to talk about. And yeah, but let's move on. The own your embarrassment, that's another important point. So if you do feel awkward, it's also okay. It's okay to admit it. You can say, you know what, I know this feels a bit uncomfortable, but it's important and I'm happy to talk about it. So this helps normalize the conversation for both of you because it is a big topic. Sometimes it's a heavy topic, right? And but it needs to be done because we want the safety and we want those choices to be informed. Lastly, the location matters too. Please plan for the conversation. If the child asks something in public, though, don't ignore it. Acknowledge the question and let them know you'll talk more privately later, right? Just make sure to circle back and actually answer the questions when in more suitable space, because that ensures they get the right information. That's first, and also that builds the trust as well, because you're following through, right? You promised to have this conversation and you're having it, so that's awesome. But no matter what you do, uh, again, try your best to be supportive, right? It's important to remember that all children, including those who, shine a little differently, all of them go through the same physical and hormonal change as their peers. Even if a child is developmentally younger or different, right, their body still matures according to their age. And most children will engage in some form of, of sexual behavior usually before age of 12. This doesn't mean something is wrong. Again, back to that previous a few slides before, right? It means that they're developing. It's actually normal. So our role is to guide them with accurate, supportive information that promotes safety and not shame. And that, I think, that beautifully kind of reflects what Marianne was just saying, right? And that teaching. So starting early builds a strong foundation, teaching body parts with correct names, explaining the difference between public and private behaviors, those touches, right? And reinforcing personal space. These all are components of, early lessons that will help children recognize the safety versus unsafety, safe situations and unsafe situations. And when puberty begins, often around age 10 or 11, and these days even earlier, I would say 8, 9 sometimes, it helps if these ideas have already been introduced, right? Again, with appropriate language, appropriate communication, that way starting around, age 8 is probably ideal. I think we had a parent who said like, no, 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 even earlier. So again, it's very individual, right? For Chinese children especially, who they might need more reminders, more time to process and practice. So early and ongoing teaching is the key. Child question, that's another important topic. Even if it feels uncomfortable, this is an opportunity. Shutting down curiosity may leave them feeling shamed, or push them to seek answers elsewhere. And we talked about it. We don't want to do that. That's not safe. But when adults respond calmly and respectfully, it builds trust. And that trust is essential if the child ever needs to disclose something unsafe, right? So trust is so important. Children are far more likely to speak up when they feel believed and supported, right? And safe. So if we don't create space for open, judgment-free conversations, they may stay silent even in the face of harm and serious challenges, right? So for shiny youth who may have difficulty identifying sometimes, or explaining what happened, disclosure may take more time and encouragement, and that's why creating an ongoing dialogue is so important. We're not just teaching, we are building connections, we're building safety and pathway for help seeking. Remember those exercises we're talking about, right? We're also testing how much they remember, how much they understand, and what's happening, right, in that department for them. So if inappropriate behaviors or relationships go unaddressed, they become harder to shift later, right? So proactive conversations, again, they protect children before harm occurs, and those conversations give them the tools to speak up if something happens. Um, so yeah, the point is, again, it's never too early or too late to start. What matters most is creating an environment where learning is safe, questions are welcomed, and children know that they can come to us. Thank you.
They can come to us, safe arms, right?
Yeah.
And then there's that deep subject about social media, right? So the children and youth of today, they're faced with a challenge more so than any other, generations have had to experience with social media in particular. So life, it's ever changing, right? And moving at what feels like 10 times the pace that it once did. So especially with these advancements in technology and access to social media platforms, this can be a space where like-minded people, they can come, they can gather, they can share their values, but it can also be used to harmfully affect those who access it. So I challenge you to think of social media as holding the feather. So when we think about holding a feather, we usually think about holding it in ceremony. So we speak with the heart, we speak with truth, we speak with care. And when we're holding it, we're the ones who are responsible. And we're supposed to, what we say is supposed to be considered, but it's also supposed to be grounded. It's supposed to be accountable. So this matters because our devices can open the door to harm coming in and harm going out. So for caregivers, phone safety is a plethora of things, and this was quite the hot topic at our live section, managing screen time, but also protecting the child or youth from what they're consuming, right? Who they might be interacting with. It can be incredibly easy to access violence, sexual content, and other damaging information online, even when the intent is not to search specifically for these things. So Karina highlighted a really good example, but I've had one of my own recently, which is crazy to think about. But when I was doing research for this specific topic, I looked up Indigenous healthy sexuality, Indigenous ceremonies, right? When I went to click on the first link that was provided with it was a totally unassuming name. It said, ceremonies and Indigenous healthy sexuality. I was like, great, this is going to be awesome. I wonder what resources they have. So I click on it. It was explicit and it was entirely unexpected. So these things, even when let's say I was a child who was questioning my identity or my sexuality, and they just want a good resource to learn about some information, that is what they're met with, like the materials that are really explicit, right? So children and youth, they can be harmed in this process. So without guidance, youth may overshare private photos, trust the wrong person, or misread unsafe messages. They may experience shame, blackmail, or bullying before they even realize what is happening. Many of our shiny children, especially those who may have that literal thinking, they may not recognize that manipulation or sarcasm, which can make them more vulnerable to grooming or online pressure. And then there's the possibility that our children may hurt others too. So even without meaning to or recognizing the seriousness of their actions, posting screenshots of private conversations, sharing photos or jokes that may shame others. A child might repeat something online that they saw modeled elsewhere, not realizing it can cause harm, or vice versa. So one example of this is, there's podcasts, there's these unassuming, powerful figures online who are actually teaching the audience, which is oftentimes children and youth, how they can behave in reality to get more power or to be liked more. And a lot of these solutions can be, anti-woman, and they can be oppressive, and they can be rather scary. So a lot of this content, well, it looks like a child might be learning through these podcasts and stuff like that. It can be not good information that might affect their behaviors. So they might also forward a photo without understanding the consequences behind it. And this is where I think I would like to include our seven grandfathers' teachings, right? And how we can help guide their choices. So first and foremost, excuse me, I just have to cough really quick. Excuse me. Love. So does this post show care for myself and for others? For truth, does this align with my teachings and my values? For humility, am I sharing this to uplift or to seek likes at someone's expense? For courage, am I willing to tell a trusted adult if something is wrong? Honesty, is my post true to who I am and how I live offline? Respect, would I speak these words if the person stood in front of me? And wisdom, does sharing this knowledge help someone or does it cause confusion? And all of this to say that this is about teaching the child to carry their values with them into all spaces, including digital ones. Whether they're 9 or 19, every time they post, comments, scroll, or share, they're in a circle, and what they do in that space matters. And, we can't control what the child has access to at all times. That's an impossible task, but we can teach them about what to do in the event that something happens where they might feel unsafe or fearful, or they might have done something wrong. So that's about creating that trusting relationship, right? Your teachings, your guidance will inform them on their next steps. And then there's the scary topic of grooming, right? So grooming is often the first step that leads to abuse, and it's rarely obvious when it starts to happen, right? So what makes it especially important to cover in this workshop is that our shiny youth and our shiny children, they can be more vulnerable to grooming, right? So groomers tend to target children and youth who they perceive as easier to isolate or to manipulate. And our shiny ones, they're so incredibly trusting, right? They crave that one-to-one connection with others, and they might not have the ability to read in between the lines when a red flag pops up, such as grooming, right? And it's hard for any child to notice these signs. Well, first there's love bombing. They might flood the child with attention, inside jokes, make them feel special. You might hear that the youth refer to this adult as their very best friend, or you might notice how excited they get when that person messages them, which is a red flag within itself. An adult should not be messaging your child. Regardless, gifts and flowers, right? This can be digital, like gaming credits, right? Or physical, like snacks, small toys, or outings. And if the child suddenly has new items or they start hiding, I think that's the context here. They start hiding who gave them something. It definitely warrants that deeper look. They might test rules. It might look like a harmless sexual joke, right? Or an accidental brush against this child. The goal here is to see how the child or youth reacts to boundaries and to pushing boundaries slowly. So you might notice your child repeating jokes that they even don't understand, right? Then there's the isolation tactics. So the adult might try to offer private rides, try to engage in one-to-one online chats, or they might even erase their messages. So if your youth is becoming more defensive regarding their device, who they're talking to, or what they're watching, whether they're deleting their history, I would definitely check in gently with them. We don't want to scare them off. And secret requests, so don't tell your parents. This is just between us. Or messages or requests for inappropriate photos, right? So these are major red flags, and even if the child doesn't fully understand what is being asked, their behavior may shift. More anxiety, more privacy around their body, more isolation, maybe even more shame. And this can result in changes of their mood too. And then there's going to be guilt and threats, right? So groomers, they're going to often say things like, well, we're both going to get in trouble. You're going down with me. No one will believe you. This is meant to keep the child quiet, right? And through the shiny one's eyes, I just want to be mindful. So shiny youth may take things to heart, right? So if they hear, do not tell, or they're going to get in trouble, they might actually believe it, right? They might believe that completely. They might confuse grooming with genuine friendship or care because they have a strong desire to fit in socially, especially if they've been bullied or rejected in the past. And groomers, they can learn the youth's fixated interests and use them to build that connection, right? Offering rare, genuine items, sensory toys, trains, Pokemons, etc. And I want to be mindful too that this might be scary and you might be thinking about a million different ways that a million different people could possibly be doing this to the ones that you loved, but it's common that you read these grooming behavior signs and you might recognize that some of these things have happened before, or listed above, but they might have been in non-abusive interactions. Like giving a gift doesn't automatically mean that a child, adult is grooming a child, but it does mean that, it's this whole goal here to talk about these grooming tactics is to make sure that, you're learning grooming behavior so that, you can make your intuition stronger and it can help you to be attentive of these things, right? So for caregivers, ask open-ended questions. So who were your 3 favorite online friends? What did you like about them? Maybe you're going to check devices together. This was a big one. A lot of times parents might feel like this is a thing that you go through it alone. You confiscate the phone, you look through the phone, but maybe it's important that you're doing so alongside your child so that they still have that autonomy. They have that voice to speak to you about like what might be happening, and then it can turn into a learning experience too. Oh, sorry, I didn't know that that's what that was. Oh, well, it's good that you know, right? So that's important. Especially if they're learning internet safety still, right? And device safety. And then set up a safe word or an emoji that you can text if something doesn't feel right. So something simple, easy to locate, that you probably don't use often so that it doesn't get misconfused. And then if something is concerning, something you've noticed, that you've seen, that something that has been shared digitally, document it, report it early, screenshots, those matter, right? And resources like cybertip.ca can guide you. And this is heavy information, right? But knowledge is power, and being aware of grooming signs, especially in how they may show up for shining youth, that will give us a stronger chance on intervening if we find ourselves in this situation. So This might be, you might have thoughts about human trafficking or questions regarding anti-human trafficking, but due to time constraints, we would, not be able to go over in this concept in full. However, if you'd like to learn more, Victim Services Ontario, if you look that up, Durham Victim Services, actually Durham Regional Victim Services, offers a free self-guided online course to recognizing, preventing, and responding to trafficking, and you can start it anytime at victimservicesontario.ca. So definitely look those up. Miigwech. And that means we're going to hop into one of my favorite parts, the good mind and relationship outcomes. So what I have here is a quick breakdown of the Haudenosaunee concept known as the good mind, or Gonekurio, I believe. I'm not entirely sure I'm pronouncing that correct, but it's a term that comes from the Mohawk language, right? So the good mind, it's central to Haudenosaunee philosophy. It's central to law and to well-being, in speech, right? And also in action. And it can be connected to the medicine wheel, like I did here, as you see on this slide, and the quadrants of the well-being, right? So the good mind is a state of being. It's what allows us to act with peace, allows a person to act with peace, reason, compassion, responsibility, and it's foundational to good governments, good relationships, and the good life. So when a youth is, supported in developing their good mind, we can see it show up in their relationships. So first, with clear thinking, as you can see in the top quadrant right there, they're able to recognize that something doesn't feel right, whether it's in conversation or friendship or an online message. They become more aware of manipulation. They become more aware and confident in their no and more grounded in their yes. And when they have a steady heart, so the next one, they respond with thoughtfulness instead of emotional reactivity. This means that they know how to express them in a way that maintains that peace and that dignity. We can go into body awareness and self-respect. Well, they're able to notice discomfort earlier, right? Speak up with them about boundaries and protect themselves with confidence, right? So these youth understand that their bodies are not shameful, but they're rather sacred. And when we go into the spiritual alignment, when they're feeling spiritually aligned and rooted in who they are, where they come from, and what their gifts are, they're far less likely to seek belonging in harmful places, right? And this is because, they're less likely to enter those unsafe relationships when their inner world already affirms them. So when the good mind is not nurtured, when trauma, confusion, fear, or shame take up too much space, we can often see the opposite: poor decision-making, emotional overwhelm, loss of boundaries, lowered self-worth. And in that state, youth are much higher risk for being harmed in relationships or harming others. So what our role is here is not to, do all of it for them, to make those good decisions for them, because that's impossible. But what our goal is to, offer clarity when they need it, speak truth without harming, give the youth space to offer, to reflect on those questions and ask them questions, to be open and to grow. So the good mind, it's relational, right? So it's holistic. And when it's present, it protects. And then again, me, hello. So this specifically, consent on the medicine wheel framework, I just really quickly wanted to highlight it. So again, an example of how we can use the medicine wheel to pretty much do anything that we want it to do. I want to check it out here. Well, the spirit. So it's going to say, this feels right in my spirit. This aligns with who I am. In my body feels safe and okay with this. Emotion, my heart feels respected and calm. And my mind, I understand what's happening and I agree. So this is a good way to, understand consent and how it's much more than just giving a yes or a no. And consent, it's really a relationship, right? The medicine wheel can offer us that way to explore the consent in a meaningful way when the whole self is in agreement. So it gives us the right to change our mind, and when we teach youth this early, we can give them the tools to understand and communicate what feels okay and what does not. Miigwech.
Thank you. And before I start, I just want to apologize. I realize I'm like touching my nose this whole time. Whoever's watching this many months after today, just know this is allergy season in Ontario and I'm really struggling. So I'm sorry. But yeah, so we talked about teaching skills before. So let's talk about it more. I'm not going to even stop on the visuals because everyone by now probably knows how I feel about it. So let's talk about more behavioral right? Like a conservative classic behavioral strategy. It's called BST, which stands for Behavioral Skills Training. And as scary it might look, as technical it might look, once you hear what it is, I'm sure you will realize you're doing it every day. So it's an effective strategy to teach skills like consent or personal space or any other skills, really. And it has 4 components. First is instruction. So how would it look? Pick a skill and then explain how it will look. Explain the behavior specifically, right? Second part is modeling. So show how it's done. Show how it looks by modeling. Third part, rehearsal. Let them practice. Whatever skill, just practice what you just showed them. And final one, feedback. Give feedback. In my notes, it usually says like give positive feedback, but I would say give a constructive feedback. So if you see something is done not necessarily correctly, talk about it, right? Just say, hey, you know what? How about we repeat, how about we train this part a little bit more? Because the beauty of this technique is that you can do it however many times you want, right? It's not just one and done. So, and again, just a tiny piece about that, it can be applied to so many skills. Some of them you can see on the slide. But really, any skill that you can think of, it can be used with BST. And of course, when it comes to learning, please try to use and take advantage of natural situations, right? Like being at the park or on the bus, and the child asks the question, or you see something, right? Something good, not necessarily something bad, like, right? So try to reinforce those concepts because this helps children understand and apply those skills in real life settings. Again, it's another opportunity to model it for them. And think we can move to the next slide that is just a summary, really, just to sum up, right? This whole conversation that we had for more than an hour by now. What we've discussed so far, teaching healthy sexuality is essential for helping youth building confidence, respect, and the ability to make informed, healthy choices. It also prevents harmful labels and reduces the risks of negative outcomes like, unsafe behaviors, some diseases, sexually transmitted, right? Or even legal troubles. This way, it's so important to start these conversations as early as you can, and of course, in supportive ways. And that brings us to the next slide with another heavy topic, but we'll talk about it nevertheless, because it's important, right? Abuse prevention and protective skills. So some shiny youths may be surrounded by many adults, support staff, teachers, caregivers, which can blur this line between, safe person and just a familiar stranger. So teaching the shiny youth about personal boundaries helps reestablish the sense of awareness. Again, back to those exercises, right? Safety, touches, correct names for body parts, trusted adults, the list of adults that, or whoever from the community, not necessarily adults, right? So we also need to address the overcompliance. This is a very clinical term, but essentially it means when someone says yes or agrees to things too quickly or too often, even when they don't really want to, right? Or they don't understand what they're saying yes to, but they're just so used to it. And unfortunately, this is a common behavior that is sometimes, I want to say nourished in our shiny children, because it happens. So we want to really address that. Because while it can make daily routines easier, it can be dangerous when a child believes that they must say yes to everything, right? This is where assertiveness matters. So giving children real choice, like choosing which coat to wear instead of, whether, to wear it or not, that's the place. Like it starts with those little things, giving this autonomy, right? Giving the choice that will teach them that their no matters. And I always say no works both ways. If you, as a caregiver, have this idea that when I say no, it means no, it works the opposite way too. If your child says no, you have to respect that as well, because somewhere along the, long way from today, they will have a situation when they really want to say no, and you want it to have a weight.
Of course, and I think
So,
that also applies we do want to respect their no, we do want to respect their autonomy, but when it comes to things like safety and to
Yes.
non-negotiables and to, well, we're going to school, you do have to put your shoes on, whether you want rubber boots or your
Yeah,
sneakers or what have you, but regardless, it still has to happen. So there are
exactly.
moments where, we will still uphold the what is it? The belief of consent, but we might not be outwardly saying like, yeah,
Absolutely.
oh,
Yeah.
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 Uh-huh.
That's a great point. Exactly. And that's why I'm saying it starts with those small things, right? You don't have to say like your child is 3 years old and you're like, okay, you do whatever. No, of course, the guidance is always there. But yeah, thank you, Cody, for mentioning that. Absolutely. And yeah, let's talk about this slide. So thank you. Abuse prevention skills drill. Ask, stop, tell. So ask here stands for questions like how does it feel? How does this feel? And has anyone touched or hurt you? So we teach shiny youth to check in with their body and feelings. And this part of building self-awareness. What feels safe, what doesn't. And in ABA, this is called a discrimination. So ability, to learning to tell safe from unsafe. So culturally, it's about trusting their spirit and their instincts, right? And this is important too. But ask also applies to us as adults. We need to ask in ways that are clear and direct. Again, this literal, like direct language, right? You can ask something like, has anyone ever touched you in a way that made you feel uncomfortable? But words like uncomfortable might be too abstract or too general. And everyone has a different idea of what uncomfortable is, right? So instead, we can say differently. For example, has anyone touched you private parts? Did anyone do something to your body that you didn't like? Has someone hurt you or made you feel scared or yucky? So asking clearly and simply helps open the doors to safety and support. Next part of this is stop. Says, say no or show no. And we talked about it, right? No has a meaning, has a weight. So, and it's okay to say no. Um, Again, many of our shiny kids, they're praised for being compliant, but safety means knowing when and how to set boundaries. So we can teach this through modeling, through visuals and role play. So we can make it fun, right? Using tools that match how they communicate, be it words, be it gestures, visuals, videos, you name it, whatever it is. Next part is tell. So find someone safe. This step is about helping kids know who they can go to, family, elders, support workers. In ABA, we break this into steps and practice in real life settings. It's called a task analysis, which is again breaking big tasks down into teachable steps. So, how you can teach telling, finding someone safe. So, first, recognize when you feel unsafe. Second, go to a safe adult. And third, use words or pictures or signs to tell them what happened. And back to number one, recognize when you feel unsafe. Just want to emphasize this needs to be discussed as well, right? It needs to be defined what is unsafe for your child. So we also need to remind them telling is safe and it means getting help, not getting in trouble. And I think that's the main message for this slide. Thank you.
Yeah, you won't be in trouble, absolutely. Sometimes it's that simple, just to remind them. And here's our two-spirit snapshot. I didn't want to end the presentation today without talking about our beautiful two-spirited folks who exist and have existed well before the arrival of European settlers on Turtle Island. So I just want to briefly discuss this just because we are coming up on time, but there are trainings out there. There's specific trainings that are going to help you be able to identify and talk about gender and sexual identity and in many different ways, right? It's such a vast umbrella that covers so many different beautiful ways of being, right? But we don't have the ability to mention all of it today. So, they've always existed in Indigenous communities, and our two-spirited folks, they walk both worlds. They blend through that binary, right? They walk between both feminine and masculine roles and maybe even non-binary, which means like neither, right? So it's integral to communities that, they've provided so much role, so much responsibility. They have the gift of the two perspectives. They were seen as very wise. They had a lot of wisdom. They were able to fulfill both roles of, hunting and gathering and, making the wear and the clothing and stuff like that, but also seeking, the medicine healers and stuff like that. So they're really good at being able to combine both roles in communities. And I think it's important too to mention that binaries, which is realistically just the societal norm, Western societal norm of what relationships, sexuality, boundaries, gender should be, they were introduced through colonization, right? And communities were still working to unlearn a lot of these ways, and ways that we do that, which today, we're in June. So, it is Pride. It's coming up on Pride, and I think it's just beautiful to be able to celebrate our diverse individuals and yeah, diverse in all communities, right? These teachings are going to vary from nation to nation, and I implore you to be able to do your own research on our beautiful humans that we have. And our youth groups, right? So Dnaagdawenmag, Binnoojiiyag Child and Family Services, we do host regular youth groups for Indigenous youth ages 16 to 24 to participate in various cultural activities. These groups can be particularly special for those who have maybe experienced some time in care, and it helps build community and peer relationships in a healthy, socialized way. So these sessions, they offer connection, they offer cultural exploration and support to improve outcomes and well-being, and each session usually includes a meal, prizes, and they count as community hours as well. So these groups are available to our internal youth through the SIMHA and so Child, Youth, Mental Health, and Addiction Worker programs, and also the Youth Justice Program. But I know that not all of our people who are watching this may fall under the Dnaagdawenmag Binnoojiiyag Child and Family Services catchment area, but there are similar youth groups that are available through your local friendship centers, so definitely look that up. They have Akwego, for example. This is for ages 7 to 12. They do activities very similar to ours. They have Wasanabin, which is for youth ages 13 to 18. They also have nutrition programs. They have the Children, Youth, and Mental Health and Addictions program. They have the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program, youth life promotion, the FASD clinic, as well as youth culture camps too. So the hope for groups like this is to create, that place of belonging to anchor their identity and for them to come together and shape and learn from one another in a supportive environment. So that's going to take us to our take home. But first and foremost, take a screenshot, look this up, do what you got to do. I would really appreciate if you had a moment to reflect on our workshop, right? So it helps us do better, be better, and grow and reflect the many diverse perspectives that we hope to reflect. So, miigwech, and these are our references, questions and comments, and then we're going to end here, but I'm going to show you guys very quickly before I lose you our resource list because I put it into this document. Okay, these are very important. The Hope for Wellness Hotline, immediate culturally competent mental health counseling and crisis intervention. The Friendship Centers, if you go to ofifc.org, this has a directory to help find a center geographically closest to you. Two-Spirited People of the First Nations. These are, a list of programs to support the Two-Spirit community and organizations who protect and uplift the voices. They also have the Two-Spirit Youth Council. They have the Native Youth Sexual Health Network. It's a grassroots network of Indigenous youth and intergenerational relatives that works across issues around reproductive health, right? So rights and justice. They have the Strong Hearts Helpline, guys. This one's really important. 1-844-762-8483. So Love is Respect. This is another online informational hub that offers the details on dating, healthy relationships, personal safety, supporting others, and resources if you're in need of help. So with that, I will finally stop sharing now. Hopefully you guys took a moment to pause and write some of those down, and we'll see you next time, I suppose. Chimigwech, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pamapi.
Goodbye.